Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Contract negotiations are now underway to try to resolve the faculty strike at Ontario's 24 colleges.
The mediated talks are the first since 12,000 members of the Ontario Public Service Employees Union walked off the job nearly 3 weeks ago. Meanwhile, hundreds of union members rallied at Queen's Park today, including several OPSEU members from Confederation College. Union officials say they're hopeful the colleges have changed some aspects of their position since the mediator in the dispute had said there would not be a return to the table unless one party's position had changed. The college's bargaining team has said it believes a settlement can be reached quickly and the classes can resume next week. OPSEU President Smokey Thomas was among those who spoke at today's rally at Queen's Park.
Getting called back to the table is always a good sign. It's never a bad sign. It's always a good sign, but it's no guarantee. But I got my fingers crossed that they get a deal done in the next couple of 3 days and get everybody back into school.
The labor disruption has left about 500,000 students out of class, including about 3,500 at Confederation College.
Ontario is making its biggest changes to its police act in a quarter century. They include stronger oversight of the police system and more powers for the province's Special Investigation Unit. John Musselman reports.
The government says these policing changes are aimed at more transparency and more accountability. The province's Special Investigations Unit would have more power to examine deadly police shootings.
Our hope is that these changes will make people, no matter the color of their skin, what neighborhood they call home, or their mental health status, feel protected and safe in their communities.
Here's a look at some of the recommendations. The SIU would release names of officers charged and report it publicly. Police chiefs would be given the power to suspend officers without pay in certain situations. Amend the Coroners Act to allow inquests when police use deadly force.
Well, I think this announcement today will change the landscape of policing. It will also make policing more equitable, more fair, and more just.
Enhancing police oversight and accountability to the public and ensuring sustainability of First Nation policing.
Toronto Police Association President Mike McCormick says he's troubled by what he calls a lack of clarity in this new bill.
We don't think that this should be left to regulation. We think that there should be amendments and there needs to be some clarity here.
Toronto Mayor John Tory released this statement in support of the changes. The greatest tool that the Toronto Police Service has is the trust of the community, and these oversight measures represent further steps in strengthening that trust.
As much as the community wants something that's fair, the police officers out there need to feel that the system is also fair for us.
The new legislation also calls for an inspector general to oversee police services right across the province. John Musselman, CTV News.
Ontario Provincial Police have still not released the identities of the two people killed yesterday when two tractor trailers collided on Highway 17 near Chappaqua. Both victims were pronounced dead at the scene, while a third person was taken to hospital with unknown injuries. There's still no update on that person's condition. It was originally unclear if there was a fourth occupant involved in the crash, but OPP have confirmed today that that was not the case. The transports collided head-on at around 8:30 yesterday morning, just past Wraith. Highway 17 was closed in both directions for about 9 hours while police cleaned up debris at the scene.
The father of 9 children, aged 1 to 16, has been identified as one of the 3 people killed in the fiery multi-vehicle pileup on Highway 400 north of Toronto. Benjamin Dunn was driving one of the fuel tankers involved in the crash and was on his way home to North Bay. Tracy Tong reports.
37-year-old Benjamin Dunn left his North Bay home Tuesday afternoon for work and never made it back. He was driving one of 14 vehicles involved in a massive fiery crash that night on Highway 400 north of Highway 88. His wife recognized the truck he was driving in images from the scene, a fuel tanker with red and blue stripes.
He was a very hard-working, devoted husband and father, and he loved his family.
Nikaya Mulak Dunn says they'd been married for a decade. She doesn't know how she will now raise their 9 children alone.
It's just so hard to fathom that my children don't have their daddy around, and they already miss him so much. And just the everyday routine, the way he would come in after work or whatever, he'd walk in the house and they would all run to him and daddy, and he'd pick them up, and they're not going to have that anymore.
Dunn was the family's sole breadwinner. He worked as a trucker for at least a decade and juggled 2 other jobs as a miner and a welder. There is a GoFundMe page to help support the family.
I just miss his voice. It's just, our family is different now, so I just miss that. It's just so tragic, and I don't know how we're going to get through it, but we will.
Highway 400 has reopened, but police continue to investigate what caused the crash. They suspect the fuel tanker failed to stop for traffic that had slowed down because of another collision. Tracy Tong, CTV News.
Thunder Bay Police are requesting the public's help in locating a missing teen. 14-year-old Lewis Fox is described as being 5'7", 160 pounds with brown hair and brown eyes. Police say Lewis may be in the company of his cousin, 13-year-old Maximus Fox Kitchkazik, who was also reported missing back on Tuesday. Anyone who has information on the whereabouts of either of the boys is being asked to contact Thunder Bay Police. And a Thunder Bay man is facing huge fines in Manitoba after RCMP seized 500,000 contraband cigarettes and 150 bottles of non-duty paid alcohol last month. Officers pulled over a vehicle on the Trans-Canada Highway about halfway between Winnipeg and the Manitoba border. 37-year-old Jason Michael Rondo has been charged with trafficking contraband, cigarettes, and alcohol. In addition, he's facing a mandatory triple tax penalty of more than $400,000.
November 1st officially marked the end of forest fire season in Ontario. According to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, the Thunder Bay District dealt with 62 blazes this past year. The entire Northwest region saw more than 600 forest fires, and that's about 3 times as many as last year. For more on the numbers, here's Carlisle Facette.
Busy, but under control. That's how Thunder Bay Fire Management described their summer dealing with the forest fires in this area. Gary Harland is the fire management supervisor in the Thunder Bay District. He says of the 62 area fires, 9 were started by humans this spring, which required the most contentious responses of the season.
In the springtime, there were several properties that were at risk in the spring between ourselves and our partners, our municipal partners, and the other folks from the other volunteer fire departments. We managed to my recollection right now, save everything that was threatened. And during the middle of the summertime and later on, there was nothing really threatening in the Thunder Bay District.
In addition, Harlan says his crews were continuously being sent out to aid other districts in the Northwest. The MNR statistics show there were 654 fires across the entire region this year. That's the highest number in the past 5 years and more than triple the figure from 2016. However, the total area that burned was actually down about 16,000 hectares from last year, but still higher than the previous 3 fire seasons. It suggests that while there were more fires this year, they were smaller and more manageable than last season's. Harlan says area crews were also lent to fight blazes as far away as British Columbia.
By and large, for the amount of travel that our folks endured and went through and the amount of fire we fought, the amount of fire line, and the amount of time on the fire line that our staff spent, there was very few injuries, very few accidents. So that's a significant achievement. And then keeping most of our fires small and managing most of fires with minimal value loss, certainly in this region, that's another tremendous success as well.
About 70% of forest fires around the province were started by lightning, while the other 30% were caused by humans. Meanwhile, the province's budget for forest firefighting this year was $118 million. Carlisle Facette, TBT News.
Thunder Bay City Council met last night for its second special pre-budget consultation in as many months. However, this one will count for the record books. The previous meeting ended up being unofficial as not enough council members were there to represent a quorum. There were no such problems last night, however, as the 55 Plus Center and Friends of the Conservative appealed for support in next year's budget. Xiaoli Li was there.
For members of the Thunder Bay 55 Plus Center, the building on River Street isn't just any community center.
It's a small thing, but they say, this is my center. It's not the city center. The staff takes ownership of it individually. A lot of the seniors that go there say, this is my place. This is where I come to do whatever I choose to do. They take ownership. They're kind of home away from home.
Council chambers were filled with the 55 Plus Center's board, who wanted council to restore funding for 2 staff members cut from last year's budget. One was a retiring staffer who was not replaced, while another is now being shared with the West Arthur Community Center, the city's South Side 55 Plus hub. 55 Plus Center members say remaining staff are stretched thin and staff often volunteer their own time. What's more, board members say the remote West Arthur Center is difficult to reach for most seniors, and compared to the more than 1,100 program participants at the center on River Street, West Arthur isn't seeing much use.
There are 36 participants in registered programs at
36?
36, yeah, they're running 3 classes, 36 participants at West Arthur. As far as the board activities with the drop-in fees, they get between 60 to 80 participants a week.
Councillors asked staff to look into why West Arthur was selected as the South Side 55 Plus hub. The Friends of the Thunder Bay Conservatory group was also at City Hall asking for funding to repair the half-century-old building and more staff for the building. Despite the facility's deteriorating exterior, the Friends group says conservatory attendance remains high.
From numbers that have been shared with us, we know that 21,600 people have visited the conservatory from January to the end of August of this year. Written and verbal comments on the beauty and worth of the conservatory are plentiful. However, we've also received many comments about its physical state. When it rains outside, it rains inside because the roof leaks.
The conservatory was originally Thunder Bay's top priority for Canada 150 funds, but staff say federal funds for that program were cut during the year. Now, Wednesday's meeting was just to hear from members of the public as city staff work on next year's budget, so there were no resolutions to pass. The City of Thunder Bay's proposed 2018 budget will be released on January 2nd, with another chance for public deputations on January 11th.
Passerby and parish members at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church will have noticed a change to that historic building. The century-old church across from the City Hall has installed gates across the entry to its sanctuary out of concern for health and safety. Church officials say up to 20 people at a time were using the alcove as a shelter, with some of them sleeping there overnight. In the mornings, church custodians would often discover garbage, graffiti, urine, and even feces in the entryway. After some deliberation, St. Andrews installed the gates out of concern for the safety of staff, parishioners, and also the people using the space there.
Garbage is one thing. That's just something you do, and I've said more than once, it wasn't the people, but it was what was being left behind, and in terms of the biohazard. If it was just garbage that we were cleaning up, yes, that's frustrating, but not debilitating in the sense of how you do your work. But for our custodian in particular, who was facing this every single day, and for those who would come to worship and to play and to participate in the life of this church, particularly, it was always something that they faced.
Januszowski insists this isn't an attempt to shut people out from the church. She says St. Andrews is also looking at installing a sharps container to handle the needles often found around the church grounds.
People using the Thunder Bay Airport in the new year will have some new fee increases to keep in mind. Parking fees for airport users and landing fees for airline companies are about to see some increases. The raise in parking prices will see airport users paying an extra 25 cents per hour for short-term parking, as the price goes up from $3 to $3.25. For long-term parking, the rates will rise from $12.75 per day to $13.75. Airport CEO Ed Schmidtke says there are many factors prompting the price changes, but he says it is not related to the airport's multi-million-dollar expansion of its departure lounge.
It's primarily supporting the ongoing operation of the airport. You know, we haven't been immune to interest rate hike increases. We haven't been immune from fuel charge increases, and we're going to see from certain suppliers the passing through of the minimum wage increases. So it's largely for the operations based on those cost hikes.
Prices will also increase 4% for airplanes landing at the airport. The price increases will amount to an extra $375,000 to help sustain airport operations. Price hikes for aircraft will take effect on January 1st, and for people parking, their increases will take effect January 8th.
The Halloween season has come to a close, but last night, all those jack-o'-lanterns got to have one last hurrah as a pumpkin parade was organized at Hillcrest Park. The unique event was a fun way to decorate the park while also promoting the city's pumpkin composting program. Corey Nordstrom has more.
From on your front porch to Hillcrest Park, the first ever pumpkin parade in Thunder Bay happened Wednesday night. From 6:30 to 8:30, residents were asked to bring their jack-o'-lanterns down to the park, where volunteers lined up hundreds of lit-up pumpkins for a mass display. It was an event filled with families, and kids had a blast checking out all the pumpkins and even got some seasonal photos taken. Megan Ross organized this event and brought in Eco Superior to help with pumpkin removal. She moved to Thunder Bay 2 years ago from Toronto, which has had these types of events for years. Ross says a pumpkin parade is a great way to end the Halloween season with a fun community event.
I think it's a nice opportunity to walk through the park and see some of your neighbors, and it's nice to give your pumpkins sort of one last hurrah, but it's really just a community building event and just a nice way to get out and see your neighbors.
With this being the first pumpkin parade, Ross hopes it can be an annual tradition in Thunder Bay. The event was completely volunteer-driven, where they helped unload pumpkins and light the jack-o'-lanterns. Any pumpkins, big or small, were welcome, and those with Eco Superior call it a good initiative, both for its fun aspect and the service it provides.
A lot of pumpkins after Halloween would just end up curbside and going to landfill, which takes up a lot of space in our landfill system. So the more we can do to prevent things from going to the dump, the better. This just provides an added enjoyment for people to participate in a waste diversion program.
For those whose pumpkins didn't make it to the parade, Eco Superior and the city also have pumpkin compost bins at 3 locations: County Fair Mall on Dawson Road, West Fort Playfield off Nebing Avenue, and the Inner City Mall overflow parking lot until November 13th. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Pretty impressive shot. I'll never play him a game of 21, that's for sure. Well, Fiona, we sort of had a messy night last night in terms of